Hey guys, it is Monday once again, and I'm going to talk to you today about the concept of being in recovery versus being recovered. This is something that until recently I was really even questioning whether it was something that could exist for a person who had a long-term eating disorder, but I really believe it can, and I really believe at this point in my life, I have come to a point where I can say that I am recovered and not just in recovery. And I actually wrote about this with an analogy that I came up with after I was kind of inspired. There's a eating disorder group on campus where I go to school at the University of Utah, and it's a great group, fabulous people. Justine Rill, who is the leader, just fabulous. She's written a book herself. Anyway, she organized a book club on Facebook in which the members of Speak this week got on and discussed with Jenny Schaefer, who wrote Life Without Ed and her new book, Goodbye Ed, Hello Me. And the book club discussion was on her new book, and she came on and actually discussed quite a bit this week, and so there was a lot of posts going back and forth. And I have to admit, I think I've been at this point of like where really I'm recovered, but I've been just skeptical of saying I'm recovered because I had like this fear inside that as soon as I said I recovered, that I would relapse or something would happen, and it was just thinking, well, if I say I'm recovered, then I might relapse, and then I won't really be recovered, and what am I really saying? But, and I have to admit, I was, for a long time, really skeptical of reading her book, because I had heard her speak about 18 months ago at the Center for Change, and when she explained it then, the way that it came across to me was a very unrealistic view of what I thought what she was talking about. And what I realized now is I was thinking really pretty black and white about what she was talking about. And when I actually read her book, what she actually said in there and described what recovered means made really a lot more sense to me. And I realized, yeah, that really fits what I believe and really where I believe that I'm at right now. And she does say in her book that there are some people who, for the rest of their lives, prefer to say that they're in recovery because they feel like that's where they are, and by their definition, they want to be careful about what they say and not open themselves up to relapse, and that's okay if that's what their definition is, but really I think it is possible to say I am recovered. I do believe that yes, I still have to keep my guard up. I can't go back to the behavioral patterns or get sucked into the thought patterns that I have been into the past, but I really believe, sorry, you can see my messy closet in the background there. I'll turn it. Okay, now I'm at a weird angle, but anyway, you'll just have to put up with it for right now. Anyway, I really believe I've reached that point where I am recovered, and especially after this discussion this week, it kind of inspired me because I really thought about it, and I came up with an analogy that really described what I think recovered means. And it was that the analogy that I wrote about was moving from recovery to recovered went like this, that I saw two worlds, and I have spent years living in this world that I call the gray world. And the gray world is full of black and white thinking, and that's why it's gray. And there's really not a lot there. It was just an area for me that when I visualize the terrain, it's more of like just kind of this barren land with no trees and little vegetation and not very much interesting to look at. And it's just all pretty much bland. Pretty much it's kind of a safe looking world where nothing really goes on. There's nothing there that appears to be nothing there to hurt you. There appears to be really nothing there at all. It's your little safe land. It's eating disorder land, okay? So here's eating disorder world. And then across from eating disorder world is this color world. And in this color world, there's all kinds of vibrant colors. There's trees, there's mountains, there's fruit trees, there's, everything you can imagine in the most bright and brilliant colors that you have ever seen. And it looks just like this luscious, fun place that anybody would just love to be at. And, for years, I stayed in the land of eating disorder, of gray world, okay? So here I was living in gray world, and I couldn't even see, I wasn't even close enough to color world to see color world, or I had shut it out long enough that I forgotten about it. And in gray world, the only voice there was eating disorder. And eating disorder, or ED, or whatever you want to call, Anna Devil, whatever, that was part of my eating disorder. The voice had become so loud that is the only voice that I could hear. So it's not that I didn't have my own voice, but that voice of eating disorder just became this loud, pounding voice in my head, and I didn't even know that I had a voice anymore. I mistook it for, this is my voice, and this is what I heard was eating disorder. And so when I entered recovery, along into the eating disorder world, is my treatment team, or my friends, or support system, whatever. So for example, I went to therapy, and my therapist would talk to me and validate me and say positive and confident things about me as a person, which was good because she validated me, but said nothing about, Ed, my eating disorder. Gave him no validation. And at some point, I began to hear. And at some point, I started to hear, every time eating disorder Ed would talk, I would hear, like, for example, what my therapist had said in therapy, but I would hear it in her voice. I had to hear it as if she were there saying it right then. I would hear her voice loud and clear, and her voice would challenge eating disorder voice. And at this point, I still didn't hear my own voice. I had to actually hear it and remember it in her voice. But this was actually a healthy step, because there was something there to challenge eating disorder. And really, in an attempt to become independent, I had become so dependent on my eating disorder that I had really lost independence. And there really is no such thing as independence, because really, we are not meant to be independent. We're meant to be interdependent. We're born in communal organizations and family units and tribal units, whatever have you. People are meant to be communal, which means that we are meant to depend on each other. And in most cultures of the world, there's a lot of interdependence, so where people have defined social roles, and they share roles, and they share resources. And I think it is only in countries like the United States, and I'm sure there's other really modern cultures, there's this idea that you can be totally independent of anybody else, and that's the desirable state, when in fact there is no such thing as total independence. However, when we have an eating disorder, we would like to believe so, and we believe that our eating disorders give us complete independence. And in that belief, that black and white belief, the truth is that we have no independence. In fact, we become so dependent on our eating disorder that in order to recover, a lot of times we have to become completely dependent on our team for a while, because our thoughts are so distorted, and we have drowned out our own voice with our eating disorder, that we have to relearn how to drive. We have to relearn how to hear. And so for a while, I really had to depend on my treatment team and my friends in recovery until I could, and they, and their job was to help me get into the driver's seat, and almost, like training wheels. And eventually you get better and better, and you get closer to really being in charge of yourself and being powerful yourself, and moving to a world where you have true interdependence. Okay, that's what I'm going to call it, is interdependence. And you'll see why later. This is going to end up being probably a 2-part video, just because it's going to take me a minute to explain here. So, I'm going to stop this right here, and I'll go on to the next section because I think we're about at 10 minutes right now.